And we're going to talk about research in adapted physical activity, kind of the why behind what we do and why we do it. So, we'll talk about individuals with disabilities as it pertains to the research. So, everything we backed up by research, whether it's a peer reviewed article or it will be my own research in this presentation today. So we're going to talk about research in the field of adapted physical activity, the why. Learning objectives, you should be able to discuss the research surrounding people with disabilities as it relates to health and fitness after this. You should be able to talk about intellectual disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, and Down syndrome. And you should be able to talk about the health implications for those groups. You'll also be able to discuss some of the research that I performed in adaptive physical activity, and we'll talk about qualitative methods of research that were taken on for this actual study that we'll be talking about. So, a life experience of disability. If you did not know, my uncle has an intellectual disability, and so throughout my life, I was basically around someone with a disability. So how did it happen? So basically, in the winter of 1955, my uncle Tom was born, and during the delivery, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, and it limited oxygen to his brain. Later in life, Tom would be diagnosed with an intellectual disability with a cognitive capacity of a young teenager. Well, Tom is the name I used in my research study, but his real name is my Uncle John, and he I've developed a strong relationship with him throughout the years, and my father has personally taken care of him, and he can drive a car, he has a job, so he's been able to do a lot of things that people with disabilities might not have the opportunity to. And a lot of this is because of the supports from his parents and his siblings throughout his life that has helped him become independent. So, in a case such as Uncle John, the way we can shape behavior for people with intellectual disabilities is giving them options and choices to do things that people without disabilities can do. So drive a car, have a job. And he was given all these choices. And this self-determination has helped him become as independent as possible. Now, not all people with intellectual disabilities are going to be independent. I would say most people with disabilities are going to have some type of dependency on either family care, whether it's economic means, whether that's occupational means, or whether that's just helping them get groceries. So people with disabilities need lots of support services, and I've got to see my grandparents and my father take care of him throughout the years. So when it comes to people with disabilities, 1 in 5 people have a disability in the United States, and with more than half reporting the disability as severe. So whether that's a severe physical, mental, or cognitive ailment, people with disabilities are all over America, and like I said, 1 in 5 people have a disability, and half of those are severe. Uh, Living with an intellectual disability includes more health outcomes, more health problems than individuals without disabilities, such as leading a sedentary life, higher prevalence of obesity, diabetes, epilepsy, and undetected conditions that worsen over time. So basically, people with intellectual disabilities specifically will have more health problems than individuals without disabilities. And this is across the board with most people with disabilities. Individuals with disabilities are more likely to be sedentary and have fewer options to be physically healthy compared to same age, typically developing individuals. So basically, people without disabilities will have more physical activity opportunities than people without disabilities or with disabilities. As obesity rates climb in all populations, individuals with disabilities typically have fewer chances to develop skills related to health and fitness than people without disabilities. So what is physical activity? Well, physical activity contributes to positive health outcomes, whereas physical inactivity contributes to chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, ischemic stroke, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, colon cancer, breast cancer, depression, anxiety, bone fractures, and obesity. So, if you are inactive, you're at a higher likelihood of getting all these negative health outcomes. And 1 in 4 people will die from being physically inactive. When it comes to economically, individuals with disabilities have a lower median earnings, and more than 1 in 5 lives in poverty. So many times, you'll see that people with disabilities will have more economic burdens, will have more bills, more medications, may have more injury prone, so they might be in the hospital more, maybe have a lower immune system, may have more health disparities, so they're gonna have more bills to pay. And if you're already poor, this is going to put you more in poverty. Furthermore, the obesity rate for people with disabilities is 39.9% compared to 25.4% of people without disability. So people that have a disability are more likely to be sedentary, most likely because of their disability and because they don't have as many options. Okay. They're at more risk at developing chronic diseases, lower quality of life, and physical activity can combat these diseases by improving cognition, happiness, and enhancing overall quality of life. We know that strength training increases muscle size and bone, which can decrease injury risk from falling. So, Krauss and Lewis found that 34.9% of people with disabilities in the United States ages 18 to 64 living in the community were employed compared to 76% for people without disabilities. So people without disabilities tend to have a higher likelihood, almost 80% chance that you're going to have a job compared to not having a job. Regardless of these additional health problems, individuals with intellectual disabilities live longer than ever before. So even though they have health problems, they're still living longer. And because of this, there's a need for physical activity programs to help this population be healthy and active. So as these individuals get the care that they need, we also have to remember that they're going to be living longer than ever before because of our healthcare. Adapted physical activity or adaptive physical education is any physical activity designed for individuals with disabilities in least restrictive environment, conducive to learning in the preferred choice of a learner, and guided by evidence-based assessments. So we have to remember that we're using a least restrictive environment when it comes to adaptive physical activity and physical education. We need to use the right evidence-based assessments, and we have to teach them in their preferred choice of learning. If an individual with a disability has a choice or chooses to participate in an activity, which is the self-determination theory, she or he will be more likely to be independent in a skill that may lead to higher or more physical activity choices, progressions, and options to move more. So as you have more choices and as you have self-determination, people will intrinsically decide what they want to do as it relates to health and fitness. So they'll decide their own physical and health goals. So this is what we eventually want to achieve. When it comes to autism spectrum disorder, in research, what it basically is it's classified as a neurological disorder affecting communication, social interaction, and behavior. Autism spectrum disorder most frequently affects social interaction. In some cases, verbal communication does not develop. So there might be a case where individuals are nonverbal. In the case of Robert, who is a student that I worked with in my undergrad, he was 7 years old. He had autism spectrum disorder, and there's mild, moderate, and severe, and he was on the severe end. And so I learned what autism was in my undergrad, which was in 2004, 2005-ish. So this is almost 20 years ago. I was working with students with autism, and I had no idea what autism was. And I didn't know how to control his behavior. I couldn't communicate effectively with him. And it took until the 8th week for him to recognize who I was in a group setting. Because a lot of times I'd have to find him and I'd have to keep him next to me because he'd want to wander off. He wasn't really communicating with me. And I was a young college student that was just learning how to work with people with disabilities. And I didn't know that I'd be working with people with disabilities. I just thought I'd be teaching physical education. I didn't even know that there was a such thing as adapted physical education at the time. I knew that people with disabilities existed in special education classes, and some of them were involved in general PE, but I knew that they were bullied a lot, and I knew that they were typically isolated and they weren't included well. So I didn't know that there was inclusive programming specifically for people with disabilities because I had never seen it at my school. There was no unified or champions Special Olympics in my school setting. It was just general PE and general sports. So you didn't see students with disabilities interacting physically with other people without disabilities. So um, when it comes to another student I've worked with, Fletcher, he has Down syndrome, and which is characterized by an intellectual disability and genetic abnormalities that typically cause congenital heart complications throughout life, delayed motor development, and increased risk for other disorders such as gastrointestinal defects. So individuals with Down syndrome may have mild, moderate, or severe intellectual disability. Most of them or all of them will have intellectual disability, but we know intellectual disability is also a spectrum. So if they have an accompanying disability like autism spectrum disorder, it may be a little bit more severe. In this case, we had a student with autism spectrum disorder accompanied with Down syndrome, or Down syndrome accompanied with autism spectrum disorder. So a combination of disabilities. And you'll see that sometimes with people with disabilities, maybe 30 to 40% of the time, they'll have an accompanying disability such as visual, maybe it's auditory, maybe it's cognition and social. So maybe it's physical and social, maybe it's physical and cognitive. So everyone depends. So that's why you have to have different assessment types for different individuals. But I work with this individual in my undergrad as well. When I moved to Wilmington and I transferred here and I worked with him one-on-one in the gym setting, and I went to the school setting and I worked in the gym setting with him there. I taught him and other people with disabilities in a adapted physical education class at UNCW, which is the same one I took at Brockport, but I actually failed the one at Brockport. So I actually didn't do well enough to pass that class, so I had to retake it. When I retook the class, my second setting, I was a lot more professional. I was a lot more serious about my degree path, and I had more of my goal in mind. I didn't really have I didn't have a good goal in my undergrad when I was in New York, but I still got a bachelor's degree in science. Moved here to North Carolina, started working on my teacher license, started working in this adaptive PE program, met wonderful people, and this is where I got my first chance at teaching in the I Can Do It program, which is a peer mentorship program for people with disabilities. So after my teacher saw me interact with Fletcher, she thought I'd be a good peer mentor for her grant that she just wrote, which was for the I Can Do It program from Slippery Rock University. And then I helped build that and coordinate that program for the last 15 years, basically. So um, that was all on Saturdays, and that was apart from my adjunct teaching and my part-time teaching as I progressed in my career. So I was doing all this as well during my master's degree. Then after my master's degree, I got my doctorate degree. So in 2017, I was ending my dissertation and I needed a social action curriculum project to enact in order to create a literature, a peer-reviewed article. So I took 8 to 10 groups of individuals with disabilities, or sorry, in 2017, I was teaching 8 to 10 groups of individuals with disabilities 7 days a week. So I was reaching over 100 individuals with disabilities weekly during the fall and spring semesters in 2017. This is when I was at my peak of part-time working at 3 different locations, and I was working with over 100 individuals with disabilities a week during this time. 7 days a week. So 7 days a week, every single day I was working with a different group of people with disabilities. And there was 8 to 10 groups. So more than, sometimes we'd have 2 different groups of people. Sometimes it was the community I was involved with. Sometimes it was with a specific class I was involved with. So I had a lot of experience, and my peak was in 2017 during my dissertation. So if you didn't know, mentoring individuals with disabilities involves building relationships, and through this, trust develops between mentor and mentee. Once trust is established, students excel in learning, or the mentee excels. So what I created was a social action curriculum project, or what we would call um, basically an inclusive physical education activity program for people with disabilities in Southeast North Carolina, and we called it the Fitness for All project. The goal was to create an adaptive fitness curriculum that included students as co-teachers or co-creators. Because a lot of times these adaptive physical activity programs are created by fitness instructors or physical educators, and they don't involve the students as co-creators. And we know that when we involve students as co-creators or co-teachers, they learn just as much as if you were to teach them, if not more. So giving them those leadership opportunities are also going to help them future when it comes to employment, being a leader in the field, being able to speak publicly to people. And we saw this directly correlated with this study. So what made this program different from other adaptive physical activity programs was that the participants with disabilities were directly involved in creating and teaching the curriculum, which is why we call it a social action curriculum project. Instead of creating a fitness class for individuals with disabilities, the goal was to have fitness class created by individuals with disabilities, allowing them to choose what they wanted to teach and how to teach it. Okay, so each individual in this project had a different disability and taught part of the class. So we had an individual with intellectual disability, autism, and then an individual with Down syndrome. And all three taught different parts of the class. So the individual with Down syndrome taught dance, the individual with intellectual disability taught fitness, and the individual with autism taught yoga. Okay, so all these different disabilities teaching different aspects of the class in a progressive manner, and all things they've learned in the past with me, except for one of the co-teachers who I had just met right before the project. So two of them I had known for 5 to 10 years before this had happened, and I had already worked with them in other programs, so I was able to talk to their parents. Obviously their parents were highly involved in this as well when it came to planning and organizing, because they had to become part of the curriculum, and so they had to come with me and learn how to plan and teach the class. So most individuals with disabilities typically have a mental, social, physical disability that creates barriers to physical activity. So Rimmer is a pioneer in the research of people with disabilities. He described 10 different themes that acted as barriers or facilitators of participation in fitness. They are accessibility, the environment, the economic issues, emotional and psychological issues, equipment barriers, codes, regulations, and laws, perceptions and attitudes toward people with disabilities, availability of resources, professional knowledge, and policies and procedures that both affect the facility and community. So there's a lot of barriers or facilitators of participation in fitness and recreational programs for people with disabilities. And all of these have different effects. Okay, so examples meaning no transportation or access to the facility. They can't get there. They can't get a ride there. Maybe the environment's overstimulating or too stressful. Maybe they can't pay for the program or membership, or they can't find it. Maybe there's frustration or fear or anxiety to go. Maybe you don't have adaptive equipment. Um, the rule or regulations that forbid atypical behaviors or facilities that are not ADA compliant. So maybe you don't allow for certain atypical behaviors, and so maybe that would be a barrier. There's stigma, stereotyping, and bias. There's very poor resources and teaching aids for these programs. Poor awareness and understanding of a curriculum instruction and assessment, and parents don't consent and allow their son or daughter to participate. Sometimes it's the parent that limits the student with disability because they don't believe they can do it. So they might not even have them go to such programs. So there's a lot of different barriers and facilitators for adaptive physical activity. So Rimmer stated that many fitness facilities lack engagement with individuals with disabilities. So if you go to a typical fitness facility, you're probably not going to see a program for people with disabilities, right? You go to your typical CrossFit center or you go to your typical box gym, you're probably not going to see a program for people with disabilities. The YMCA might, something like that. Special Olympics is designed for that, but a lot of times fitness facilities lack engagement with people with disabilities. Brett Langer suggests that descriptive information from qualitative research may lead to a better understanding of individuals with disabilities and people closest to them. So we took qualitative information. So we interviewed the co-teachers, the parents of the co-teachers, the participants of the program, and the parents of the participants. And so we talked to the people closest to people with disabilities and people with disabilities, which formed this qualitative research study. So the SACP, a Social Action Curriculum Project, developed into a Fitness for All program dedicated to adaptive personal training and adaptive group fitness classes. We developed this for people with disabilities, and when it came to group training, community fitness classes, and we promoted this to parents I knew through past programs, camps, and relationships with their son or daughters who had disabilities. So after working for 5 years in the community with people with disabilities, I was able to find enough participants and co-teachers to make this possible, and then also interview everyone after the 8 to 10 week study. And we continued this program yearly for about 4 to 5 years until COVID hit. So now I believe there's still personal training, but it still probably needs to be revamped. So we took 3 individuals or participants were chosen to create the curriculum. We'll call them Adam, Brenna, and Sarah, all of whom were out of the network, or a term used by parents whose son or daughters are no longer eligible for public education. So these are students that have transitioned out of schools, and they have different disabilities, and they taught different aspects of the class. And so I had to work with them for about maybe 2 to 4, maybe 6 weeks to prepare them to teach, and also train them to get them ready to teach. So they all got individual personal training from me as well, and programming just for them, as well as we created a curriculum for the class. To prepare and implement this social action curriculum project at Fitness for all 3 participants were given ample time to sit down, talk, and plan a curriculum that they understood and could teach. The curriculum needed to be highly adaptable in their voices. My goal was to facilitate and teach a fitness class at the same time without taking over as the lead teacher unless necessary. So basically, I was the one that would, get everyone organized, tell everyone where they needed to be, and then I would allow them to kind of go through their sections. And I would not take over unless it was necessary. And so I, did a lot of teaching and talking in the ear in the first couple weeks, and then slowly I kind of backed away and allowed the students with disabilities to teach the class. While I was a high participant at the start, as weeks progressed, like I said, I played a lesser role. I also took charge to help individuals who needed physical assistance during exercises and facilitating teaching. So as they would teach individuals, I would kind of get on the floor, work with people with the physical limitations or people who had the most needs, and I would try to help other people while they were teaching. So I was kind of like co-teaching with them, right? The next step was to prepare Adam to teach the class. So after we kind of talked about how to plan, we needed to talk about how to prepare each student to teach. So Adam taught dance. He was also a cheerleader, and he took dance lessons. So he was familiar with how to teach dance and how to lead dance. I've seen him do it before, so I thought this would be a perfect fit. Adam and I met at the location of the gym where Fitness for All took place, and how to create a dance he would be able to teach in his portion of the curriculum. Now, we tried different ways. He would mirror an iPad, which helped him stay on task. Sometimes I would cue him when to change to the next dance move, because we would create 4 dance moves per song. We had 3 songs with 4 dance moves and like 1 final ending move. So it was you do dance move number 1 for 30 seconds, dance move number 2 for 30 seconds, dance move number 3 for 30 seconds, and then dance move number 4 for 30 seconds, and then repeat until the end of the class, until the final dance skill. And so he taught 3 dances as the warm-up, and that's how we created the curriculum for him. Some researchers, Kloof, Connor, and Van En, stated that the combination of dance and enthusiastic instructor and music may encourage individuals with intellectual disabilities to engage in exercise. So this is also supported by research that having an enthusiastic instructor and music and dance, it also encourages people with intellectual disabilities to engage in exercise. So Adam and I developed 4 steps. It was 4 steps, sorry, not 3. He would teach during Justin Bieber's song, Baby, and we did other songs as well, but that's one example. And so that's the song that we used for one of the songs we use. And then now we'll talk about Brenna. So Brenna had an intellectual disability, and she taught the fitness portion. So we had started with dance, then we went to fitness, and then we did yoga. So the individual, Brenna, who had intellectual disability, she taught fitness. And we met to discuss the curriculum we would create in the form of a script on several occasions. So we talked about what exercises she wanted to choose, and we talked about why we would choose those exercises. She had assigned a homework that she was demonstrating that she was doing it outside of the class, so she was practicing with her mom. So her mom would film her, and they would do all this stuff together, and I would kind of tell her what she needed to do for the week so she'd get ready for the class. So every class she'd get prepared for the next class. But we use the same template for each class to make it easy for the instructors. I didn't want to change the template, change the structure, change the exercises unless it was needed. There was times when we had to adjust exercises and be like, oh, maybe we need to order this a little bit differently, but they understood why we needed to do that. So for her to co-create the class, she needed to know the exercises she would teach. So we came up with 15 exercises she could teach involving dynamic stretches and basic exercises. Together, we created a script to read to the class as she taught. So she had a script that she could read, so she felt comfortable, and then she would also demonstrate the exercises. Sarah, who has autism spectrum disorder, had begun to teach yoga prior to this class in a yoga education program that I created a couple years before this started. So I created a yoga education program for people with autism spectrum disorder specifically, and we created portions of a book that they could take home, and we taught yoga in a more structured way. She also practiced yoga at home 2 to 3 times per week, so I thought this would be perfect for her to teach. And Sarah, her mother, and I created a yoga script she would teach to the class. So her mother was more involved than the other two mothers when it came to actually creating the script, because she was able to teach me how to create a script for her daughter that her daughter would be able to teach to the class. And I needed her mother in order to do that. And so a lot of times when you're creating curriculum or co-teaching with a student with a disability, you want to use their parents as resources and help them guide you, interact, and communicate with their sons or daughters so you can be a more effective leader. The Fitness for All community class for the social action curriculum project took place over the course of 6 months in the spring and fall of 2017. Classes were Sundays from 1 to 2 p.m. Combined, there was 20 classes offered to the community of dance, fitness, and yoga, which was all free and sponsored by different corporations in the community, and we raised over $10,000 for this 501c3 nonprofit. So I did not earn anything from that. Some classes had up to 12 participants with intellectual and developmental disabilities, included several community members without disabilities. In the classes with multiple participants with varying disabilities, it became challenging to accommodate every individual, particularly those who needed physical assistance. So there were some challenges that we experienced. Physical disabilities usually need physical assistance, which means you need one-on-one availability, and sometimes you don't always have that. So those would be the biggest challenges we faced. So for data collection, what we did is we took 15 interviews with 13 individuals. So 3 of the teachers, 3 of their parents, and then the rest were participants and their parents. So one was a sibling and their mom, and then a couple other were just their moms. All mothers were used as interviewees, so I didn't have any fathers that were participating in this, which could be research of its own. So 15 interviews with 13 individuals were conducted in a private and quiet room at a fitness center where the Fitness for All occurred. So we did these interviews at the Fitness for All in a quiet room with the door closed so that they felt prepared. And we went over what they were going to talk about before and after with their parents. And one parent was in the room with us, helping us if needed. 2 interviews were focus group interviews that involved questions to each individual with time to discuss as a group. 13 interviews were one-on-one, with some participants choosing to conduct the interview with a family member. And I used the smartphone voice recorder to record interviews and transcribed each of the interviews myself. And I took all of this information and created some themes. So some classes had up to 12 participants with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We talked about that. When it comes to data analysis for this qualitative inquiry, an exploratory analysis of each interview was performed, interpreted, and discussed. Exploratory research allows a researcher to fully understand the needs, motivations, judgments, perceptions, and intentions participants bring to an interview. So you basically go over each interview and you try to find some themes, and you try to see what the themes are that everyone was generally bringing together when it comes to data analysis. So exploratory analysis is kind of just not taking a theory in mind, but just looking for what is being said about the program. So for this, qualitative inquiry and exploratory analysis of each interview was performed. When it comes to this, 15 interviews were analyzed and synthesized to understand participants' lived experience after the Fitness for All community fitness class. The data were then coded to find themes to answer research questions. So 4 themes emerged from this data analysis of how a social action curriculum project shaped the experiences of participants in an adaptive physical activity program co-taught by individuals with disabilities. The 4 themes were community, development, and motivation and fitness. So basically, you have community, where we were able to build a community with this program. Each participant and co-teacher developed. They were motivated by the curriculum, so they had fun performing the curriculum, and they all developed fitness and health related, the fitness and health related components of fitness, whether that's getting stronger, or being more motivated to be more fit. And so we'll talk about some of the findings and some of the voices from those individuals. So here's from a parent: there's not a lot of opportunity for these young adults to just go to any kind of exercise class. So I got to understand their perspective toward fitness for people with disabilities as it relates to not only this research, but how they felt about this exercise class or about this type of program. Being accepted by a group was important for participants because families who experience disability are often excluded from many aspects of life. Okay, I think she loves the group. She feels a part of the group. She feels accepted. So that's what one of the parents said about one of their participants. One of the co-teachers' moms said, "Fitness for all. I think it's wonderful for these adults to learn how to exercise properly. It's a place for them to come and do it. They don't have much. There's not a lot of opportunity for these young adults to just go to any kind of exercise class. They need the structure you have here, the guidelines and simplicity they follow, and you have volunteers to come help them, and incorporating the dance makes it fun, and the yoga at the end is very soothing, which is what they need." So that's what one parent had said. Amy, a fitness participant, said, "I have all my friends here and it makes me feel comfortable because I can do everything and stuff. I like it. I like the exercise class. It's really fun, and it's really fun, and it's a really fun activity, a lot of exercises and stuff." Another parent said he talked about how much he enjoyed it, how he looked forward to it. Another parent said being with peers is important and it gives adults with disabilities a chance to be a part of something. A participant, Hannah, stated that she loved the community, and particularly because it was in a mixed setting with individuals with typical and atypical ability levels. Development. So let's talk about some of their development. One teacher said, "I'm on the bleachers, and me, Jordan, was like, hey, let's do some push-ups." And the mom was like, "I'm laughing because, I don't think Sarah's going to do a push-up." But Jordan, me, I'm down there eye to eye with her, performing push-ups with the hand motions. And she's just looking at her mom like, "Mom, look at me, I'm doing push-ups." And she's looking at me like, "How are you getting her to do push-ups?" So part of that development is just the motivation to work out. Yoga has been a part of Sarah's life. She not only practices it by herself at home and uses it to be chill. So people with autism typically will have higher anxiety and stress levels. So this helps her be chill, her mom said. So that started way back when I was on my master's degree working with this individual. So this had developed throughout the years. So she saw this on the sidelines to see where it's gone from where it's going. And she said that she loved that. And that's one of the co-teachers' mom. I have to say, without this program, she wouldn't do anything. I'll say to her, "Let's go for a walk," or just being her mom. I'm always the one telling her, "You got to get up and walk. You got to do this. You got to do that." Well, now it's somebody else. So parents feel like all the burden is on them to get their son or daughter healthier and fit because there's no one doing it. So she was just happy that someone else is the one saying it, not just her. Since she's been coming here and doing that, it's helped her even with her job. She works at a coffee shop. She's interacting more. She gave a speech at a celebration. She would never do that. She would cower because she would always be so anxious. She doesn't do that anymore. So this is the individual with intellectual disability that started teaching the fitness. Her mom said that it helped her get out of her shell. You know, people don't realize this little step, getting up there and teaching a class, it just helped her really tremendously in her career path. So that's one benefit. Another parent said, I love the curriculum because it's basically the same each week. So she doesn't have to learn something new each week. She's not confused. And that's certainly important for autistic kids. And this is what the parent said. So being respectful is to be consistent, not to have to learn something new. All you have to do now is tell her what to do and she'll do it. She doesn't have to relearn it. Individuals with ASD like organization, structure, and routine. Do you know what helped when you, me, the researcher, were working with Brenna one-on-one, and I was out of town and I couldn't, and she's telling me that when I was out of town and couldn't teach her, her mom had to record her. And she recorded her and she made her record her and she's doing the exercises and I told her what to do and she was accountable for what she was asked to do. And this is something that wouldn't have come otherwise if she didn't have homework or if she didn't have a plan or a goal. So if they don't have plans or goals or homework, they're probably not going to do this when they go home. And that's the most important thing, is that they take this fitness home with them. Then here's another parent conversation. Then I asked her why she thought fitness was important. She replied, so that they stay healthy for as long as possible, especially her. She's got 2 open surgeries. People with Down syndrome typically are going to have heart problems or heart surgeries many times throughout their life. I know many people with Down syndrome that get heart checkups on the regular, and she's going to have a 3rd surgery, she said. So a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of medical issues for people with Down syndrome. So this is why one parent said fitness was important. One parent said, well, thank you for starting the program. I mean, it's wonderful. Brenna's learned so much. She's teaching me at home. It's another step moving forward. I just hope it continues. Without this program, I don't think Brenna would ever work out. So very strong words from people with disabilities about this program that we created in 2017. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a little bit of research behind individuals with disabilities as it relates to health and fitness. The next presentation I'll lecture you on is categories of disability. So now we'll go into each disability: intellectual, autism, cerebral palsy, visual impairments, auditory impairments, and we'll talk about how to adapt and modify activities specific to each disability. So I look forward to teaching you in lecture 3, categories of disability. Have a great day. Thank you.